Welcome. This morning we're going to talk about the 5 components of a great construction website. So this is my family. I always like to start by introducing them. I'm surrounded by boys all the time. We like to spend a lot of time outside. And this is us at one of our favorite spots this summer, Bennett Springs State Park. They like to fish, and I think it's one of the most relaxing places, so it's a win-win for everyone. And this is my May Create family, including Roxy and Quimby. We call them our Cuddle Analytics Managers. And together we solve marketing problems, mostly online. So feel free to tell us what you do in the chat or introduce yourself. I always like to check and see, did anybody actually run out of toilet paper during quarantine or during this pandemic? I think it's kind of a funny thing that was what the big to-do was throughout. So even our dogs help us solve problems online. So this was from our most successful social media campaign that we ran for it was an end of the year donation campaign that we ran last December, and we raised over $950,000 for 142 nonprofits. And I know that I see several familiar companies today, so please do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. The title of this webinar is 5 Components of a Great Construction Website. So these are the components, and at the last minute I decided to throw in a 6th component, so you get a bonus component today. So we're going to cover that those are fast loading and easy to use, mobile friendly, properly formatted content, a page for each service, stuff you update, and telling a compelling story. And we're going to talk about what each one of those means. So from a bird's eye view, we're going to talk about how everything fits together. Just for a moment, I want to go really big picture on this. How you're viewed online is more than just a website. So we could get super technical, but it all boils down to people being able to find you online and you being able to communicate with them. So what do you need to have a good online presence? I didn't label these 1 and 2 for a reason. One isn't more important than the other, although today in our webinar, we're going to focus on one over the other. So you need to have a website that doesn't stink, and you need to have a plan to get people to your website. So if you have lots of traffic, but you have a really crappy website, you can't capitalize on your opportunity because you don't have the right equipment. It's sort of like bringing an El Camino to a job where you actually need a dump truck. On the flip side, if you have an awesome dump truck, aka a website, but you don't have anything to haul or you don't have any traffic coming to that website, you have an amazing product, but you don't have anybody to buy it. So I've made my case, and today we're going to focus on a website that doesn't stink. So again, please use the chat, ask questions, or feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. I'm happy to answer them throughout. It's always wonderful when we have a discussion in these webinars. So when we're talking about websites, it's always really important to understand how Google ranks websites, because people go online and search Google for everything. And so they look at a handful of things to determine if your company is legit. And Moz SEO, which is a huge SEO company, does a survey of hundreds of leading search marketers, and they ask their opinion every 2 years on 90 different ranking factors. So today's data is from 2018, and in the spring we'll get the 2020 data, and I love getting that data. It's super fun, and we totally geek out on it. But while these 6 things kind of jockey for the top spots and how their percentages, they always are the top 6. So they're not going anywhere. They just slide around just a little bit in importance, but there's 2 that grow every year. And one of them we're going to focus on today, and the other one I just want to mention to you. So the one set that grows every year is your online listings. Google My Business listing and consistent listing information. So if you need a list of places that your website should be listed online, I can get that to you, and we can talk about where your website should be listed and how those listings should work. In 2016, those two pieces equaled about 14%. And in 2018, you can see that those two together are up to about 17.5%. Now, the big piece we're going to talk about today is website content and behavior, which is 44.5% in the 2018 data. And in 2016, it was just 38%. So those two just keep going up and up and up, while social links, incoming links to your website, and reviews keep going down. Now, links are a really big piece of this pie, but in the construction industry, people just don't focus on them as much. So that's why we don't spend a lot of time talking about them. So that's kind of a big picture overview about how sites are ranked. And today we're going to look at what MayCreate we feel are the 6 components to a website that doesn't stink. So some of these are directly related to the chart that I just showed you, and some of them are a little bit more indirectly related to the chart that I just showed you. So the very first one, I think it's one of the most important. Google has put a ton of emphasis on it in the last couple years. It's a fast loading and easy to use website. So just like using the wrong mix when you're laying down a road or a parking lot, a slow loading website that's hard for people to use is completely detrimental to the job. I love waiting on hold, said no one ever. It's the same with your website. People don't want to sit and wait on it, nor do they want to think about how to use your website. We like to follow what we call the coffee cup rule. Do you want to think about how to use your coffee cup? I certainly don't. If you had to consult a user manual prior to using a coffee cup, what would you do? Does anybody have any opinions on what you would do? If you see me looking up here, this is where your chat is. So that's why I keep glancing up here just to make sure nobody has any questions. Heck, I even thought about throwing away my kid's Optimus Prime transformer because the transition process was so convoluted. So imagine that what your potential customers are going to do if they can't figure out how to use your website. They're just going to leave. They don't even have a 4- and 8-year-old who really need Optimus to become a semi again to motivate them to use your website. They're just going to wonder why a bunch of jerks went to a hassle to create a website that they can't use, and they're just going to wonder why somebody would want to work with people who create a terrible website. So just like you've moved on from sippy cups and left your coffee cup, tongue-tied this morning, just like you've moved on from coffee mugs and you've left your sippy cups behind, today's internet browsers are Corvettes compared to the Power Wheels that we used 5 years ago. So in 2015, our internet browsers were like Power Wheels, and today they're Corvettes. Modern coding is really important when you're building a new website. Making sure that you're using the most up-to-date and efficient ways of building and laying out your platform. It's just like building an actual structure. The foundation is incredibly important. You don't want your customers to have to worry about building that foundation. They need to just be intuitive and be able to look at your website. But they're not the only ones that have to use it. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to update your website. So if you want to be able to update it on your own, you should. And modern coding techniques can save you a lot of time in doing that. Modern coding techniques can also make your website have a much, much longer shelf life. And the goal with that is if you're building a website now, that it can render correctly in 5 years when web browsers are what is going to be like the Millennium Falcon, because they're just going to keep getting better and better and better and faster and faster and faster. So keeping your website up to date is a super important component, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. The next component is mobile friendly. In 2019, mobile devices comprised 48% of web page views. So if I were a gambling person, I would say that next year your website is probably going to have more mobile traffic. However, there's a kicker. If your website's not mobile friendly, you're probably not going to have more traffic at all. What we are seeing in all the data, and yes, we are data geeks, is that desktop traffic is not going down at all. So we're seeing the same amount of desktop traffic on sites, and mobile traffic is going up. However, if your website's not mobile friendly, you're going to be benched, and you're not going to get that additional mobile traffic that we're seeing for other people's websites. In 2015, Google started to push for mobile friendly. So I always like to think back when I got my first smartphone. I was long out of college, so that was a fun memory for me. And then now I look at it and my 8-year-old is playing on a smartphone. Not that it's his, but Google really wanted people to have a great user experience on their smartphone. So they started pushing for it in 2015 by labeling websites mobile friendly. So if you think back, you saw that little tag on Google that just said, hey, this website's mobile friendly. But now they're really tying that into their algorithm. So where you rank on Google is directly impacted by whether your website is mobile friendly, whether you have to pinch and zoom on your website or not. And so people who have mobile friendly websites are actually ranking much higher on Google than their non-mobile friendly counterparts. So if you have to pinch and zoom, it's a real problem. I want to talk about this component, online employment applications, in this mobile friendly concept. I think it's really, really, really important that we discuss it as part of mobile friendly. We're all in the same boat as far as hiring goes. I know that things are a little off right now with this pandemic. However, the general consensus is that our workforce is on the low side. We always need more people. And so one of the ways that you can combat that is having a really good mobile friendly site for people who need to apply online, because most people don't have a computer in their home. They don't have a printer in their home. They aren't downloading PDFs and filling them in and emailing them back, or they're not able to get away from their job and come in and fill out an application anymore. So if we can put our employment application on our website and make it super easy for the applicant, but also incredibly easy for HR or the business owner, whoever it is in your case, because I get to wear that hat in our business. I don't get an HR person, so I know that many of you get to wear that hat as well. That's incredibly important. It's got to be easy all the way around, or it's super frustrating, because if you have applicants who aren't hearing back because the process is really hard for the person who's in charge of hiring, that's not ideal. It looks really bad for your company. So to make it easy for the applicant, we want to list the open positions and their details. What are the locations? What are the benefits? You know, how is travel involved? What's the job entail? We want to make sure that it's really accessible via mobile, that there's no printing, no emailing, or PDFs required. And we want to have large enough fields that they're easy to click on and type in. So that's going to make it super easy for people to be able to submit those applications online right from their phone. And then making it easy for HR. So sending it to HR on their normal application. And remember, when I say HR, I don't necessarily mean that you have a person dedicated to HR. Could be you in some cases. So sending it to them right on the PDF or the application that you're used to seeing is really important. So that way, nobody wants to get an email that's 10 scrolls long with a bunch of information that's not formatted appropriately. So we want to send it to you as a PDF. We want to collect all the normal information except your social security number and your driver's license number. The reason I say that is because you don't want to be responsible for if sometime down the road your website got hacked, unfortunately, and you had social security numbers stolen and thus a bunch of people's identities got stolen. I know that those are very important details that you need when you hire somebody, and you can print that application and have them fill it in when they come in for orientation or for their interview once you decide to hire them. They can also sign their application and date it right then. We can also connect that to the HR software if applicable, or it can automatically file those applications based on the position or based on the job as well. So doing a lot of things to make it super easy for HR is really important in addition to this mobile friendly side of things. We just want to make it easy for people to apply so you can get the most applications possible and then make it easy for you to manage as a business person. So the next piece is properly formatted content. This is a big component. Having properly formatted content is really important to both your users and to Google. So it really impacts the way that Google reads your content. It also impacts the way that people interact with your search results. The formatting determines how your listing is displayed on Google. I do always find it super interesting that they break this 44.5% down this way because I always think that they go together and they reach the same end goal, that they get people to click on your site from your listing and stay on the page to learn about your business. So the first 7%, I'm going to start at the bottom. So the first 7% is like, be authentic. You know, don't be a goober that nobody wants to meet. That's really your first 7%, personalized web content, talking to people like they're actual people. And then the next 11.5% is how people interact with your website. So if they just go and leave because it takes forever to load your content, or your content isn't what you said it was going to be, that's a huge strike against you. So it makes sense that personalizing your content would reach the same end goal as how people interact with your website on Google. And so then that all feeds into the next 26%, because if you're trying to rig the system and your website shows up for a search term or what somebody types in Google for something that's not relevant, they're not going to click on it. And then Google's going to think that your website's not relevant to the searcher. So I think it's all tied together. You need a good site with stuff that makes people want to stay on it, that is set up the exact right way so that people get there from Google. It's all tied together. Oh, missed a slide. So also in properly formatted content are the appropriate keywords. So we all want to show up for our services. However, what you call your services are not necessarily what people searching online call your services. Now, fortunately, in the construction industry, it's a little bit different because we do most of the time, for most of our services, have a normal set of terms that we use. However, I always like to throw out 2 examples. So like 10 years ago, we were redoing our website and we're looking at all of our search terms, and we used website design all over our website because that's what our search term was. That's what our keyword was that we wanted to show up for, that we thought people were searching for. And then we did all of our research and found out that most people don't search for website design. They search for web design. So that was an interesting one for us. And thank goodness we learned that. It's been a long time ago, and I'm glad we learned it then and not now. And then I always look at the insurance industry because they call vehicle insurance, auto insurance. So if you work in the insurance industry, you'd usually call insurance auto insurance. However, in the general public, no matter if you're getting insurance for a car or a truck or a van, people call it car insurance. And so when you're writing website copy for an insurance company, it's always interesting because the people who work in it call it auto insurance and the people searching for it call it car insurance. So just marrying those two together. Now, Google really likes you to optimize one page for one set of key terms. Some terms yield the same results. So, for example, if I search pizza and I search pizza restaurants, I'm going to get the same thing. If I search gluten-free pizza, I'm going to get recipes. So if I search pizza, it's going to give me restaurants. If I search gluten-free pizza, it's going to give me recipes. Now, if you were optimizing your page, you would do the research, decide if you're going to optimize for pizza or pizza restaurants, or maybe it's going to be both because that's one set of key terms to Google. And then I always look at long tail keywords because they're more specific. So when you're working with an agency, think about how you can make your phrases more specific so that people get to exactly what they need. So I want to ask you guys a question, and I'm hoping that you'll participate with me. What do you think that people use to find someone to do drywall? Does anybody have any ideas? General contractor. So people typically, when searching for drywall, they do include the word drywall. So we put this in. This is using a service that we look up key terms and we see what Google says. And so using this data, you can see that drywall contractors has a lot of monthly searches. And so this is nationwide, but the competition's pretty high. And then if you were going to place an ad on it, the bid's pretty high. However, if you were in St. Louis, for example, and you did drywall contractors St. Louis, there's not a lot of people that are going to rank for that. And so you might want those local listings rather than going across the country to do drywall, depending on your business. And it's a longer tail keyword. So adding some extra things on your keywords when you're optimizing your website isn't a bad thing. And the nice thing about this one in particular is that I'm probably going to show up for drywall contractors because I'm using drywall contractors and adding St. Louis to it. So for this data, for this term, I would optimize this page for drywall contractors St. Louis. So properly formatted content includes your key terms. And that leads us into a page for each service. So if you have multiple services, we're going to optimize those pages for that service or set of key terms. Why do you need a page for each service? Because I say so, Google says so, and your prospects say so. And I get it. You really don't know me, so why would you believe me? But I hope the other two sources can kind of convince you. So because Google says so, they say that 44.5% of your score on their platform is content and behavior. So having a page for each service gives you more personalized content, which results in higher conversions on Google. So if I'm looking for a specific service that you offer, the chances that you're going to show up on Google are much higher. You can rank for those terms, and your site won't display for things that you don't talk about on it, meaning that how people interact with your website is better. So you're showing up for the right stuff on Google, and people are going to click on it. So back to the right mix, optimizing one set of key terms per page. So your prospects also say so. GE Capital Retail Bank's major purchase shopper study found that consumers extensively research and compare prices when they're making major purchases. So this is purchases over $500 that they both need and want. And depending on the category, they spent between 40 and 137 days researching before making a purchase. So this was in 2019, 81% of them conducted research before making a major purchase. So in looking at a couple of examples, what it might look like for you to have pages for each service, this is an example. Some of you may recognize this. I know we have some people that know this company on our call today. They have their main services at the top, and then they have broken down those services into even further sub-services. And here's yet another example. So they have less services, but they've still broken them down into very specific things that people are going to search for. So what are you going to put on those pages? You need more than just a bulleted list. So I looked at a website this week, and they had a sentence and a bulleted list. Your website's not going to rank for that service with just a sentence and a bulleted list. You need to have information, photos, your FAQ. Sometimes your process is always really nice, how to engage with you for that service. So contacting, request a quote. I always really like when you have completed projects that are directly related to that service at the bottom of the page. Definitely share why you're better than your competition. Have that humble brag on there. It could be the scale that tips for you. And then include your keywords and your copy. So if you're writing your own copy, do your best. If you're having somebody write your copy for you, make sure that they're doing that keyword research for you. So moving into our next section of our 6 components of a great construction website, stuff you update. So updating your website's really important. The reason I say that is because Google comes out and they take a snapshot of your website. And so the more often you update it, the more often they'll come out and take a snapshot of your website, meaning that you have opportunity to add things, add services, add projects that you can rank for. So Salesforce quoted in 2019 that 70% of people did research online and they started their buying process later. So they contacted sales 70% later in the buying process. Let me say that a little more clearly. I don't know that it matters what number's in that box. Honestly, the deal is that the sales process has changed from what it used to. Even from when we started Make Create 15 years ago, it's changed. And we used to buy a car by going to the car lot and test driving a whole bunch of cars and deciding what we liked. And now some of us research everything down to how many cubic inches are in the back seat and can we fit a car seat and how everything fits in and how it works together. And we arrive at the car lot knowing exactly which car we want to test drive and if it's actually available on that lot to test drive. You can also learn the trade-in value and the average price for a used vehicle or the make and model that interests you. And so people are initiating that buying journey on their own, and you want to be the person to get in front of them and get that information to them and not your competition. This is just the same, and I want you to think about this, not just for getting a new project, but it's the exact same thing for getting a new hire. So if you're looking to hire employees, they are going out and researching you online before they ever think about applying to your company. So what does your image online tell them about you? Make sure that you're starting that relationship with them instead of just waiting for them to meander on your car lot. So things that you update, provide a potential viewer with what they need to make a purchasing decision. Everything that you have on your website is a potential handshake, and you get to make their acquaintance before they ever even speak to you. It's not just a potential handshake for a viewer, but it's also a potential handshake or a signal to Google for their algorithm. It shows their algorithm that you offer good quality information that people care about. This encourages the algorithm to rank you higher and higher and higher in the listings. So each piece of content is like shaking somebody's hand. So especially right now when we can't go to all these networking events and shake hands, I mean, believe me, it gets more and more weird all the time that I stand in front of this camera in a room by myself instead of going to a trade show and shaking people's hands. So it's even more important right now when you can't go do those things. So each piece of content is like a door that you can invite visitors in. So I want to show you kind of what I mean by that. So if you only have 5 doors on your website, you have a home page, an about page, a services page, team, contact. You will have 5 good opportunities to shake hands with people. These are good opportunities. It's not that your website's bad if you have these, but if you can have more opportunities with people, that's better. People aren't always searching for 2019 Honda Odyssey. That's what I drive. Sometimes they're searching for best family cars. And so if we can give them the option with the services that we offer, it's better. So if you create sub-services pages, so when we looked at that example website earlier where they broke their services down into sub-services, you're just adding more places for them to get into your website, more search terms that they can put into Google, more keywords that your website's going to show up for. If you add 1 project per month or 1 resource, oftentimes when you're talking to someone like me, they're going to call this a blog post. They do not mean this in a fashion that you're going to write about your day. It's not that kind of a blog. Think about it as answering a question that people ask you all the time. So if you can add just 1 of those things in 1 completed project per month to encounter people on their buying journey, the more content you have, you can build more traffic. So just to give you some metrics, last week May Create on our website brought in 5,044 sessions. So that means that there were 5,000, our website was hit 5,044 different times. And the blog pages on our website had 5,907 views. And only 281 of those visitors came to our main portion of our website. Almost all of them were to our blog posts. So those are just resources where we answer questions for people that they have. So they're asking a question on Google and we answer that question and they found our website and read that information. Our main website includes all of our services, all of our landing pages, all of our thank you pages for offerings, all of our portfolio. So even our projects are in our main section of our website. They still hit our blog post way more times. So 5,900 times they hit blog post and 281 times they hit our regular website. Now keep in mind, those are all in one location. They're all in our main website. Don't have two separate websites for your blog and your services. So if you're really interested in learning how to blog for business, let me know. I have a whole presentation about that that I can schedule and go through the steps of planning it. But really, the biggest thing is adding your completed projects to your website. I think in the industry that we're in with construction, that we're really spoon-fed. Here are some other examples that you can have to add more things to your website, stuff that you can update. But really, at a minimum, I want you to add your completed projects. We're spoon-fed by these completed projects in this industry. There's other industries that don't have it so easy. So if you're doing nothing else, get your completed projects on your website. If you have an off season, it's a great time to stockpile them. If you're applying for awards through an organization that you're in, you're already doing the heavy lifting and the legwork. You just need to get them added to your website. Make sure you answer the question, what was the challenge? How did you solve it? What services did you offer? Add some pictures with it. Just get those into your website. It's really important. So the last component to a great construction website is a compelling story. We're going to go back to this chart. I've showed it a whole bunch of times today. So we need people to connect with your company. They know what they want, but as we all know, knowing what they want and what they actually need aren't always the same thing. So the goal with your website is to get them to trust you enough so that you can consult with them and tell them what they need and be the expert, and they won't freak out. And it's the same thing when you're hiring somebody. If you can help them along and tell them what they need and encourage them throughout that process, you can build that rapport through your website. So this is a saying we've had around our office. I know what you want is what you think you need, but what you want is not what you need. What people really need is someone they can trust to help them get to the best end product, and someone they can trust enough to set them straight throughout the process. You can gain their trust the same way that you can deal with an impatient child. You can tell them a story. Don't be afraid of telling a story on your website. Tell that story however it works best for you, with your talents that you have as a team, but you do need some words. So a lot of people come to us and they tell us, we want very little words on our website. And that's where I have to go back to that and I say, I know that's what you want, but Google can't read videos yet. They can't watch videos and they can't see photos yet. Someday they're going to get there. I can almost assure you of that. And so they need to tell that story using words and give them the website that they also want. So tell the story the best way that it works for you. Just make sure that you're using that coffee cup method and that it's an easy to use, fast loading website that your clients aren't going to get frustrated with. So that's our last component today. If you want more advice for construction marketing, you can go out to our podcast. We're just in the process of splitting this away from our main podcast so that's solely construction content. We're offering tips, tricks, tech, anything you need for marketing your construction company with purpose. questions. Feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. Type them in the chat. We're here. Okay, if nobody has any questions, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.